Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, recapping the 2023 legislative session. I sit down with a panel of veteran reporters to ask about the bills that passed and failed in the Roundhouse this year. And
Indigenous women have to wait until November of this year to reach the earnings that white men made by the end of last year.
Political expert and author Martha Burke gives her impressions on women's issues taken up by the legislature. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. The governor is considering more than 200 pieces of legislation passed out of the Roundhouse after the 60-day session. Coming up on the show, I ask our line opinion panelists about what passed and what didn't, and how this session compared to years past. Later on, political correspondent Gwyneth Dolan speaks with a group of up-and-coming journalists to ask about their impressions of the legislative process in Santa Fe. But we start with a group of veteran reporters who've been in and around the Roundhouse for years. Let's get to the line. Now it's time to welcome our line panelists for the week. We're happy to be joined in studio by Albuquerque Journal staff writer Dan McKay. Editorial page editor at the Santa Fe New Mexican, Inez Russell Gomez, is with us once again. And first-time panelist and editor at Source New Mexico, Sean Griswold, is here for the first time. Thank you, Sean, for joining us. All right, we begin this week looking at what bills made their way through the 60-day legislative session and have been sent to the governor's desk. This year, lawmakers passed 241 bills, and the governor has until April 7th to sign or veto that legislation. Any bills left unsigned after that date, of course, will be considered pocket vetoed and move no more. Now, addressing crime has been key to the state's administration this year. In her State of the State address, you might recall Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham called for a ban on assault weapons, an end to the straw purchases of guns, and for the passage of a safe storage gun bill. In the second week of the session, she announced the creation of a Business Public Safety Council and pushed for legislation focused on targeting organized retail crime that we've talked about here on the show. We saw successful action on all of those fronts by the end of last week. We'll talk about what didn't get done in our second segment, but focusing on those crime bills I just mentioned that did pass. Dan, what stands out to you here? Were there any meaningful steps taken with these crime bills, or perhaps a sense of maybe try to get too much done at once? What's your sense of how it all shook out?
I think the biggest crime bill that made it across the finish line was the organized retail crime. Yep. Basically, the state is creating new crimes, new penalties intended to crack down on people who, sort of terrorize these grocery stores and big box stores and walk out with items. Then maybe they hit a bunch of stores all at once, and right. This law will help them kind of aggregate what they've taken, and sort of the goal is to have more appropriate penalties. I think that's probably the main one that got through, that sort of the business community and some of the public safety folks were really looking for. One of the big casualties is, there's this perennial debate over pretrial release and pretrial detention. Those bills really didn't go anywhere. There are different attempts to either change the Constitution or pass a law or do different things. Those are kind of, they've run into the same hurdles every session. I don't know what will change on that front, but organized retail crime is probably the biggest one on my mind.
It seemed like there was a lot of agreement going into the session on that, all facets of law enforcement. I mean, nobody was really against this bill, and it's a huge problem here in New Mexico and of course, all over the state. Sean, interestingly, House Bill 5, Benny's bill, makes it a crime for anyone to make a firearm negligently accessible to a minor. Second go for this bill. Interesting, Source New Mexico did some good coverage on this. The sense of the argument on this bill, it took us 2 laps, meaning it came up last session. What was the problem here? It seems pretty logical just to lock up guns. What's the issue?
And of course, I think it starts when you look at the constitutionality of, gun legislation. And while this is a crime prevention measure, and that's how it was pitched, what's interesting is, in part of our jobs, is that we get to kind of follow the minutia, and you see how crime packages stall and fail in committees.
Right.
And so for me, one of the most interesting ways to see how these bills fail is when you watch the Senate Judiciary Committee. Anybody who is like a legal scholar or a law student who wants to follow why these bills don't go anywhere, Joseph Cervantes, a senator from Las Cruces, gives essentially a constitutional argument as to like why these bills are unconstitutional, and that's where they ultimately end up stalling. And so following those committees and understanding like that those bills are not going to get there because they just don't meet the state constitutional needs and requirements is kind of how we understand this. And for this bill to get passed, though, there was not an essential gun lobby effort that was proposing against it. We also understood because of the emotional capacity of Benny Hargrove, the student who was shot here at Washington Middle School just across the street from where we are down here in downtown Albuquerque. There was a quick sense of urgency. People have a hard time arguing against, making gun safety measures that protect our schools.
Right.
And ultimately, that was part of the argument, but it could essentially also protect, youth and minors as they have access to guns in the city.
This would have had to have Republican support to pass. Interesting, like there was a little bit, wasn't there?
There was, yeah. That was the one that definitely did not have an issue when it came with Republican support on it.
Yeah. Inez, glad to have you here, by the way, always. Senate Bill 64, abolishing life sentences without parole for children sentenced as adults. It was an interesting debate, wasn't it? This idea of how long a child should serve before they become eligible was a real angst point for a lot of people, because that's a lot of time if we're talking after serving anywhere between 15 to 25 years of their sentences, depending on the severity. I'm curious your thoughts on how that came about, the arguments, and how it eventually got passed, actually.
What I found so interesting about this bill is it shows how legislation is introduced, and then between sessions you work on it some more, because it failed last time because the district attorneys were against it, families of people who'd been hurt in really horrific crimes were against it. And instead of being defensive about it and just maybe trying to push it through or wrangle to get it passed, they withdrew it.
Right.
And they came back and they worked on it to make it more palatable to everybody, to respect the pain of victims and to understand the needs of prosecutors, but also to keep focusing on the idea that everybody has this life to live and we can be redeemed.
Right.
And when you think about it, serving 20 years is still a very long sentence. If you get sent in when you're 15, you don't get out after 20 years, you just get a chance at a hearing.
Right.
And it'll be up to you in prison with hopefully some resources to become a better person and to then go live your life in a way that makes a contribution to society.
And that was part of the argument. If you're spending 15 years in prison, your chance at rehabilitation, the way we have it set up now, not saying the future, but the way it is now, it's not very hopeful. Let me ask you, Dan, Sean, actually, we go to you on this one. Also included in the Voting Rights Bill is the Native American Voting Rights Act. Takes a number of steps to make voting easier for people living on tribal lands. Again, this has been out there for quite a while, but it got done. And for a lot of folks, this is actually a very big deal to get this done. I'm curious your sense of this bill as well.
Yeah, and watching that debate last year, that was the final story we did on the legislature in the 30-day when we saw this bill filibustered with one of our senators, speaking about baseball and a whole bunch of other things for a long time to kill the bill, which we saw this year with a couple other pieces of legislation. But I think with the voting rights bill this time, you just saw an incredible coalition of individuals from all across the state. You had support from Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse-Oliver. This was also something that was prominent on the governor's agenda to get passed. When it comes to the Native American Voting Rights Act, I think that's another prominent coalition of people you're starting to see here is prominent political strength with Native American communities that are a coalition of 23 tribes. It's hard to get 23 people to agree on anything, and you have 23 different governments agreeing that we need this legislation to make our voting easier. And so one of the key elements you're going to see out of it is you're going to be able to align tribal elections with general elections or primary elections. Because for instance, this year you had last year when you had the election cycle, the election that you vote one time when you're voting for your state representative or congressional representative, then next week you vote for your tribal representative. So now they're going to align those dates, so it's making it easier as the argument for people to vote for not only their local communities but also the local governments that they have to support.
That's right. Let me bounce to Dan on this one. Follow up a little bit to what Inez and I were just talking about. This idea of released felons who previously had to complete their entire sentence, including parole and probation, before they could vote. Now they can. And it's interesting, it's not just that. The New Mexico Voting Rights Act, in case you're not familiar with this as viewers, allowing ex-convicts to vote at their release from jail or prison. A lot of pushback on this from conservatives, and a lot of idea that could be a lot of game playing. We're talking about potentially over 10,000 people perhaps which could be very changing in certain districts depending on close votes and things. Your sense of how the meandering water went on this one, the arguments, what did you hear during this one?
Well, I think there's just a concern that, New Mexico does allow felons already before this law to restore their voting rights, but that it was a really cumbersome process that didn't really work.
Right.
That even somebody who'd been in prison would present their paperwork, showing that they'd completed their full sentence at a county clerk's office, and that still they would be denied, and they were just having a lot of trouble making this work in a practical sense. So this bill basically says, as you're leaving, we can, make sure you're registered to vote, et cetera. You can't vote while you're in prison, but, as you're exiting incarceration, we'll make sure that you're registered and that your rights are restored, and you won't have to fool with any of that. So in some ways, it's kind of a simplification of what we had before. Kind of the argument against it from conservatives was, well, you haven't finished your sentence until you've completed parole or probation or whatever. So that was kind of the pushback. But that's an important part of the bill, and it certainly could, increase participation among this group.
That's right. 2 drop boxes at every location. Isn't that interesting to accommodate this? The idea that convicts, and by the way, I should mention the 11,000 number I got from Source New Mexico. I quoted, over 10,000, so I want to ask you about this. But again, this argument about, we have a lot of folks, let's put it bluntly, who need a second chance in life sometimes. And voting can be a big part of that. It makes you feel better, it makes you feel like you're connected to your country. You're not just a pariah because you might have made a mistake earlier in life. Any downside to this, in your view?
I never see a downside to more people voting personally. Right. And I think that when you allow full citizenship and full participation, that means you're less likely to do bad things, because if you're part of society, why would you hurt it?
Thank you. Exactly right. Now, Sean, to your reporting and the source of the 11,000, that's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I'm already reading people worried about this could lead to shenanigans. Again, in the reporting at Source NM, what did you guys find as a possibility on that?
Well, a lot of people in New Mexico are incarcerated. That's
right.
just the history of what the state is, and we have to ultimately come to terms with the fact that we have an entire generations of people who have either served time, have lived inside, or are currently living inside. And as Inez was saying, it's very important to bring back your civility. And so getting the right to vote is your first participation in society. Mm-hmm. People that are incarcerated, that are inside, are ultimately, they pay attention, they read. They know that there's so much policy that's happening around them, discussions, kind of like right now where we're talking about these individuals, but they can't participate.
That's right.
And so, if there is going to be any type of shenanigans, that's going to be something to be interesting to follow with this whole voting rights bill, is how it's going to be applied overall. And so, we're not going to see that until as we follow this law and as we see the applications from the Secretary of State and local county clerks. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also part of an element where people are suggesting things could go wrong as part of this whole election integrity concern, where individuals are just starting to question the results of elections and even questioning the idea that our elections, we shouldn't trust them.
Right.
And where does that come from? It comes from an idea where ultimately a section of people who have ultimately losing elections very consistently.
That's a very good point there. Appreciate that pickup. Inez, let's talk about this, House Bill 7. We now have some clarity on abortion here in New Mexico. This has been a big raging issue across the country, as we all know. Different states are trying to figure out where they stand after last year's fall of Roe v. Wade. The governor got a lot on this issue. Was it just a timing thing? Just the timing's right, or what happened here?
Well, I think it was her clear leadership and her approach, and I also think that there are a lot of women in the legislature.
Right.
And we have a lot of young women who are still fertile, and they know what it's like to be pregnant, to want their baby, to maybe not be able to take care of a baby. Mm-hmm. And I really think that you see the priorities of the legislature are changing because of this whole class of representatives and senators who have been pregnant and are moms and understand the importance of it. Mm-hmm. And they also, I think, are very respectful of gender diversity, because our legislation is also protecting, transgender, gay, lesbian, all of that.
That's right.
And where other states in the country are becoming, you're a pariah in those states, we're going to be a place where people can be themselves and be welcomed and loved. And I think I could not be prouder of what New Mexico did in that area in terms of welcoming people.
Took a couple of years, but it got there. Dan, I want to steal just one more quick minute with you. This collegiality thing we keep reading about, that everybody just got along so well in this session. I'm not sure what that all means at the end of the day, but how did you take that? Was it as collegial as people were trying to make it seem, or was it really that kumbaya?
I would say, there's definitely a lot of combat, like
Yeah.
procedural combat, partisan, really fierce partisan debates.
Sure.
I think that, on the House side, it's typically been the more partisan chamber, but there was, like I said, new leadership. I think there may be less, bridges that haven't been burned yet, so they're able to collaborate. As Inez was saying, there's also, the composition of the chambers is changing. The House has more women than it's ever had before. I think that has definitely shaped the environment. And then you just touched on the Second Chance bill, the juvenile life bill. That was a bill that was amended and picked up some bipartisan Republican support. So I think, personality-wise, maybe you're seeing there are some instances where people, instead of just trying to push things through with a bare majority, they're making efforts to pick up some Republican votes
That's
too.
a good point there. Is it going to last, do you think?
That's an excellent question. Next year, it'll be an election year.
Right.
Every legislator will be on the ballot. I think you do typically see maybe some increase in partisan tension. I don't know whether it'll last.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Thanks to our Line Opinion panel. We'll be back here at the table to talk about some of the major legislation that didn't pass, like the governor's proposed ban on assault weapons. That's in less than 10 minutes.
The whole thing kind of opens itself up to litigation
Right.
that could last for years. For example, a person who is denied an abortion or gender affirming care could bring a lawsuit. Well, how likely is that to happen for an individual? And how long would that take to litigate? Probably years.
Right.
So it is a victory, but it's not a slam dunk.
Every year, our state lawmakers head to Santa Fe to work out the budget, and every other year, they consider larger issues impacting our state. That was the case during the 2023 session, and inside, a group of up-and-coming journalists got their first taste of the legislative process. During a recent Facebook Live conversation, New Mexico in Focus political correspondent Gwyneth Dolan caught up with 3 of those young reporters to ask about their impressions from the session and about some of the legislation they covered impacting rural and indigenous communities.
You were all local news fellows. Bella 2 years ago, and Megan and Jeanette just finished this 9-month fellowship program in local newsrooms. And you're all new or pretty new to covering the state legislature in Santa Fe. I want to ask you first, how did that go? What is that experience like for a new reporter? Bella?
I was up there probably 4 or 5 times. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was good, talking with more experienced reporters and getting tips about, navigating the website and how to track bills more easily. So it's a good experience.
Well, I'm sure all of our viewers who have ever tried to look up a bill feel your pain trying to navigate that website. They do keep making it better. And even during this session, I noticed improvements that were making it easier. Jeanette, while we were up there, one of the things you covered was the Native American Voting Rights Act. And this is the first of its kind in the country, a part of the election code devoted specifically to this. What will that do?
So one of the things it does is a lot of Native communities are rural, especially here in the state. So what it does is it creates the opportunity for Native American voters to be able to vote at their tribal building or an official building in their reservation. It also creates it also allows them to use PO boxes, because a lot of, tribal members, they don't have a permanent address. There's nothing like that on the reservation. So they rely on PO boxes to get mail. And before now, that was not considered an official address to vote.
In the past few years, we've seen moves in other states to restrict voting, to bring early voting down a little bit, to restrict or make it more difficult to apply for absentee ballots, things like that. This was entirely different. What's it about?
Yeah, the main goal of this is to expand voting rights accessibility and generally just make it easier for people to vote. So there are a few different things in this. Like you said, the Native American Voting Rights Act is in this. There are a few other clauses like requiring ballot drop boxes at every county, making sure there's at least 2 of them, creating a permanent absentee voter list so people don't have to re-register. And I think another really important one is for people who are convicted of felonies. Once they're released from a detention center, they're allowed to vote, which they currently can't do if they're on probation or other things like that.
Bella, you are an Indigenous Affairs reporter at New Mexico In Depth, and one of the things you looked at was a proposed tribal education trust fund. What would this fund have done?
Yeah, so tribal education is heavily reliant on, in part, on state grants that are given out annually, or I should say that tribes can apply for annually. And for a couple of reasons, tribes often have trouble spending all of the money and time. And that's made it difficult for tribes to build sustainable education programs and actualize this vision of educating their own children, which there's a profound need for, especially in our state. So this year there was a bill that would have created a tribal education trust fund. Basically, the revenue generated from the fund would have provided reliable and automatic funding for tribes to build truly community-based programs, focusing on language, college and career readiness, and many other priorities that vary from tribe to tribe. But ultimately, the bill sponsor sort of ended up tabling it with the idea of working in the interim and coming back with a bigger ask funding-wise next year.
Jeanette, you reported, we both did, on a bill to support the creative economy. And this had supporters in rural areas, especially because a significant amount of the money is required to be given to rural communities. Is that right?
Yes, and I think, one of the biggest things when we're interviewing, we wanted to really just nail down what exactly is the creative industry. And I know it got kind of confusing and they had to go back and revise it because, we talk about creative industry here in New Mexico, we talk about film, but the film office has its own thing. So that's not a part of it. It's really just local artists. I mean, we talk about, game designers, visual artists, dancers, architects, ceramic artists, they would all be able to benefit from this program.
On another topic, Megan, there was some work done on disaster relief. And you have done a lot of reporting on the fires we saw last year. What did the legislature get done on disaster relief?
There were a few different measures passed for disaster relief. Like you said, last year we had a massive fire season in northern and southern New Mexico. We saw the biggest fires we've ever seen in this state. One of the first bills that the governor signed was sending $100 million in zero interest loans to northern New Mexico so they could repair infrastructure that the floods largely washed out. And the state expects that'll be eventually paid back because that fire was caused by the feds and they've taken responsibility and paying for it. There was also the Black Fire in southern New Mexico, which hit around the Gila National Forest. That was the second largest fire behind Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon in northern New Mexico. They're getting the budget allocated $2 million for them, which is actually $1 million less than what lawmakers who represent those areas requested. And they did discuss a few issues with why that $1 million was cut. And Senator Crystal Diamond actually brought up that in the budget, there's $1 million set aside for a university telescope, although nobody requested that through legislation. So that was cut. The McBride Fire, those sponsors also requested just over $18 million for repairs for their counties, but that was cut down to just under $7 million.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming and talking to us about what you've done. We hope to be hearing a lot more from you this coming year. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Gwyneth, and those new reporters for their work. You can watch all of Gwyneth's stories from inside the Roundhouse this session online on the New Mexico in Focus YouTube page. Now back to our line opinion panel of veteran journalists. Nearly 1,100 bills were introduced during this year's 60-day session, not to mention the hundreds of resolutions and memorials brought forth by lawmakers. Now, although the vast majority of these proposals failed to make it out of the roundhouse, several failed bills have caught our attention. We return now again to the proposed crime bills. In her State of the State address, the governor received a standing ovation, if you remember this, for her call to ban all assault weapons. House Bill 101, which would have banned the possession, manufacturing, sale, or transfer of assault weapons and large capacity magazines, died in committee and never received a vote from the House or the Senate. Now, Daniel, I'll start with you on this one. What happened to this bill? Was this bill destined to fail from the beginning, or is the governor, a ban on all assault weapons is a very deep subject. You're not going to wrestle to the ground in 60 days. What happened here?
Yes, it was probably destined to fail from the beginning. In New Mexico, some of these gun restrictions are Democrats look skeptically on. The safe storage bill. There were quite a few Democrats who crossed the line and voted with Republicans against it.
Yep.
The assault weapons ban. It ran into a new legal environment with Supreme Court decisions. And I think there was some concern about whether it went too far and violated Second Amendment rights. Even Democrats were raising that issue. And then it also has a lot of kind of technical challenges around how do you define an assault weapon, how do you define these attachments, things like that that made it just sort of really tricky to get it through. So that one is one that I think is probably less likely among the gun bills that failed to advance in the near future. It just it has a lot of sort of particular challenges unique to that issue.
Right. That's right. Sean, you hear the list that Dan just laid out. How do you get a bill like this passed? Do you know what I mean? It would be an enormous amount of hurdles to get across.
It's so wild to me to understand the political nature of New Mexico when you look at Democrat-controlled Senate, House, governor, and so many Democratic voters here. A lot of progressive agendas, as we spoke about earlier, pass through, and it's nice to call for a ban on assault weapons. New Mexico is still a gun state, and that crosses all political boundaries and lines, even if you're not a registered voter or care to be involved in politics. And so I think that lawmakers are listening to their constituents. Even the progressive lawmakers that we see from Albuquerque and from Santa Fe, they all have constituents that are gun owners. And so supporting a gun ban is something that just ultimately goes against people that vote for them.
Inez, a post-session press conference you were aware of last weekend, the governor said she is, quote, going to keep trying, end quote, on crime-related bills of the near 40 this year. Only 10 made it to her desk, 10 out of 40. I guess that just explains how difficult it is to move forward on gun stuff, isn't it? But could they signal this as success, perhaps, those 10? So 10 pretty significant.
It's a quarter. When you think about it, and you said at the beginning there were 1,000 bills introduced and only 240 passed, so that's not a bad
good comparison
number.
there. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I hope everyone stops and reflect is that legislation doesn't necessarily stop crime.
Right.
And perhaps they need to look at some other things. And I would look at the court system and whether we're they always say, are we enforcing the gun laws we have? Well, are we funding our court system? Do we have public defenders? Do we have district attorneys? Can we get people convicted quickly?
Right.
If we did those things and ensured they were safe in jail, we could lock up criminals and then they wouldn't be out, doing things again.
Yeah.
So I think the approach to reducing crime needs to stop from adding penalties or taking away guns that you can't pass anyway because it's unconstitutional, to maybe getting the laws in the books, enforcing them, and locking up the bad people that need to be locked up.
Good points there. Shifting to election stuff, guys. Senate Bill 73 would have opened New Mexico's primary elections to non-party affiliated voters. Sean, this is a big one. I got personal friends who are dying to see this pass. I'm a declined state. A lot of people are. What happened here? Was this just too much of a threat to the status quo? The arguments around it, I'm curious why this didn't make it.
I think that's what you hit it on the point, is the status quo there is really concerned about what this could do, how you would open that up. I was surprised that it died quickly, that it didn't make it very much, as far as we had, and the debate on it didn't go too substantial. But I'm still curious to know why something like this is not popular when I believe there are a lot of independent New Mexico voters who want to have open primary elections here.
Right.
Back to the idea, who are you supporting, your constituents or yourself? And it seemed like in this one, lawmakers are out there for themselves.
We've got numbers from NM Political Report. Nearly 23% of all registered voters, guys, in the state are non-party affiliated. I would think, Dan, this would have some traction, some backstop, some draft, something to give courage to lawmakers to be able to do this. What was your sense of the argument and why this didn't pass?
Well, I think, it's kind of a glass half full, glass half empty thing. First of all, open primaries did pass the Senate, a full chamber. That's never happened before.
Fair point.
So I think if you're a supporter of the idea, you can argue that maybe there's a little more momentum. On the other side, I think that, as Sean mentioned, legislators, these are people who've been elected under the current system, and they're used to talking to, voters in the primary. They know that this system works for them, and there's got to be some anxiety about, do I need to start tailoring my advertising to some broader group of voters? There's probably just, I think, some sense of, well, I don't, this is unknown. I don't know if this is going to be right for me, much less for the state. So anyway, I think it's an issue that's not going away. It did advance a bit this session. As Sean mentioned, it didn't really take off on the House side at all, but there are some signs that maybe the landscape is changing.
Something to be said for getting out of Senate. I mean, that's no small thing. Something to be said for that, certainly. Dan, when we had you halfway through the session, you did a Facebook Live with me. We're very appreciative of that. But at that point, I'm so interested to talk about this. We talked about the modernization of the state legislature. At the time, you said it was a partisan issue with Democrats loudly in favor, and you also mentioned the proposal of lengthening sessions during even-numbered years. Had a little more momentum at that time, but it didn't quite carry. None of these things seem to work, despite the public in many polls saying we want some change here. What happened? What's the disconnect here?
Yeah, I think that this is another thing where there's kind of a split between the chambers. The House Democrats really seem to be pushing this idea. Sure. They are younger, I think, in general. They are also more women, as Inez mentioned. The Senate is a little older, a little more male-dominated. And so you saw like the proposal to establish a salary commission. That one ran aground in a Senate committee. So it did advance through the House. Right. I think they have a little more convincing to do with some of these older legislators like George Munoz, the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. They've got some convincing to do on that side. So this is, it's not just partisan dynamics at play, but also differences between the two chambers. And then the lengthening of the sessions, that's an idea that has sometimes picked up Republican support in the past. This year, it advanced, and I think that the leadership just decided not to spend a lot of time on it this time. And in some cases they can wait because these are constitutional amendments that wouldn't go on the ballot until 2024 anyway. So there may be some sense, well, maybe they'll take another stab at them in next year.
Yeah, and speak up on that if you would. I mean, again, is this too big a bite for older legislators to even consider something like this?
I think a lot of people, once they get elected, they got elected under the system. It works for them, and they don't see a need to change. And I think the people who want to modernize the legislature are going to have to make a better case, not just that they're enriching their pockets, but that it's fair to be paid for work.
Right.
And I maybe start with some middle reforms. We had some columnists that wrote about you need more staff members because they do a lot of the work. So can you expand the staff? Can you focus on interim committees and pay people more for when they're working during their time off?
Right.
Because they do a lot of work for not very much recompense. And
there seemed to be general agreement on this issue beforehand. Yeah. I can't think of any Republican elected who didn't have the same problem as Democrats, not enough staff.
Right.
And that was the betting money going in. If there was one that was going to pass, it would be that one. Yeah. I don't understand why we can't have staff. There's just something very weird about that. Go ahead and pick up on that if you would, Sean, as well.
It was so fascinating to watch that debate and watch it dissolve because we have to remember the voters were going to have to approve this. This was an attempt to make a constitutional amendment. And so as I'm watching the debate, I'm seeing these lawmakers not even agreeing and muddle it at all. I'm like, you can't solve this part and figure it out. How are you going to pitch this to voters?
Right.
So I wonder if at some point they recognized, how are we going to ask for a raise in this economy in our next election cycle?
That's a bitter pill. The idea of paying all these members like $80,000 each, that's just a big pill for New Mexico. We're going to have to chop at this one. Thanks again to our panelists. We'll be back for one final conversation on the budget and some tax changes in less than 15 minutes. First, a conversation on how this legislative session fared in women's issues. Earlier this week, I sat down with Martha Burke, political psychologist, author, and host of the podcast Real Time with Martha Burke, to ask about abortion rights, rebate checks, and the failure of paid family leave. Martha Burke, thank you for being with us today. Cover some issues affecting women's issues here in New Mexico, talk about some of those things. One of the biggest headlines is New Mexico's codified abortion rights. You've been on the show many times talking about this over the years. I'm curious, House Bill 7 passed. It was signed by the governor, of course, before the session ended, which was very interesting to me. Did you feel it was going to pass that easily, looking back?
Yeah, I did. The governor has always been strongly pro-choice, and of course the Democrats have a good strong majority in both houses of the legislature, so I was not surprised that it passed. I was a little surprised that there was not more overt protest at the Roundhouse.
By who?
Well, by the anti-abortion folks. Maybe the bill snuck in, I don't know, but it seemed to get plenty of publicity.
Is this would you consider this a major win for Governor Lujan Grisham? She's been talking about this for a while, but it's happened.
Well, I think it is a win. How major we will see, because what has happened, Gene, is they haven't really stopped the jurisdictions from putting these barriers up. They've slowed it down.
Right.
And so I don't know yet whether it will be a major win or whether it will be a barrier. The whole thing kind of opens itself up to litigation that could last for years. For example, a person who is denied an abortion or gender affirming care could bring a lawsuit. Well, how likely is that to happen for an individual? And how long would that take to litigate? Probably years. Right. So it is a victory, but it's not a slam dunk.
It's an interesting situation when you think about what House Bill 7 does, which is obviously empowers the state AG or a local DA the right to initiate a civil lawsuit in district court. It's very hard to predict the future, as you just mentioned, but I'm curious how you see local DAs approaching this. It's been dropped in their lap for some places, Roosevelt County, Eunice, other places that have passed these ordinances. How does a DA manage this? This is a very difficult position.
I think it's interesting because the way it's worded, it allows the DAs to do it. It does not compel.
Gotcha.
And so many of them, or several of them, may decide based on local politics or their own proclivities that they're just not going to touch it. And that, again, Gene, puts it back down to the victims of this restrictive legislation that the counties and some cities are trying to pass or have passed. Right. And so it's going to be interesting to see, but I don't see the DAs jumping into this with both feet.
How about our Attorney General? Again, it's hard to predict, but these are political issues. And depending on if it's a campaign season or not, do you see what I mean? There's all kinds of ways this could kind of flow back and forth. Not to ask a prediction, but can you see it in a situation where a DA would wander into, your Attorney General would wander into a DA's district who does not want to do this?
Yeah. I can see that, and again, it's going to be a push of me, pull of me.
Right.
The DA is going to be conflicted, maybe not on personal views, but just on how far should they go. We already know that abortion is legal in the state of New Mexico. And what these counties and cities have done is they haven't prohibited abortion. Right. What they've done is make it so hard for a clinic to come in that the clinic's going to say, we don't need this. Right. We've got plenty of other problems without having to get into years of litigation with a city or county. So it's effectively limiting access to abortion without doing so directly.
Right. We'll see how that plays out. Like you say, it's going to be very interesting. Another, for families, another important issue was, of course, the wide-ranging tax package that did pass through the legislature included $500 tax rebate payments for individuals and $1,000 payments for couples. It's less than the $750 that the governor wanted, but I'm curious how you feel this is impactful on, we have so many households here headed by women.
Absolutely.
So many as a percentage. Is $500 a game changer for them, or is it,
for some people it will be, Gene. For some people it's groceries for a month.
Right.
Gasoline to get to work. So yes, It will, and you're very correct, because most low-wage workers are women.
Right.
And the lowest low-wage women are women of color, which, as we know, in this state means mostly Hispanic and indigenous women who are so far behind on pay equity. Indigenous women have to wait until November of this year to reach the earnings that white men made by the end of last year.
Wow.
Now that is a shameful statistic.
Right.
But so yeah, $500 maybe to some of us that are a little more fortunate is not a game changer, but it could be for a single mom with a couple of kids trying to keep them in school, make sure they have decent clothing to wear and so forth.
I appreciate that, absolutely. $500 is a lot of money, a lot of households here for sure. What didn't pass, what was interesting, was the paid family leave bill. And that could have been a game changer. I'll use the word for families, certainly. Was there too big a bite trying to be taken here, or is this something we can sneak up on perhaps in legislatures of the future?
Well, I think it's both.
Okay.
I think it's both. It seemed draconian to the businesses that did not want it. We only have in the whole United States 11 states that have paid family leave. Now, it has been shown, although this is apparently not convincing to employers, that it does foster more loyalty to the company. The workers are more satisfied and don't tend to leave and go for another job and that sort of thing. They say they can't afford it. Well, Gene, we hear this argument all the time. Businesses have a right to make a profit. That isn't true. They have a right to try to make a profit. If they had an absolute right to make a profit, we could just go back to slavery.
Right.
So there has to be some push and pull. I think it was good that the bill came up. I think it will be back, of course. Most of the states that have it now, it took several years.
I bet.
And people have to get used to the idea, oh gee, could we really have that?
Right. I mean, 12 weeks is a big, bitter pill for a lot of employers.
12 weeks is big, and that might be something that has to be bargained down.
Right.
Because if you started with, say, 4 weeks, that would still be huge to most of the workers in this state. And I think 12 weeks was a big bite, and that probably was a big factor in the extreme opposition.
Was there something to be gleaned from the amount of opposition that coalesced very quickly on this bill and was very loud? I mean, we know the lobby system, but business really did come together. Does this speak to the nature of the fight in the future?
Absolutely, it does, because businesses, I mean, let's face it, I'm not anti-business.
Sure.
I know you're not either. And COVID has taken a big bite out of not only profits, but just the ability to stay in business. So I do understand why, when they hear 12 weeks, they think that's a fourth of the year.
Right.
And we can't afford that, and I think they're correct. But on the other hand, the families who do give their time, blood, sweat, and tears, so forth, to the companies do deserve some consideration. So there's got to be a middle ground. I think that will come back. It'll come back with a lesser period of time, may take 2 or 3 sessions, but eventually it'll happen.
Another issue, final issue that's developed into a woman's issue, if I might be so bold, is the governor's appointee for Secretary of Indian Affairs. We talked about it on the show a few weeks ago. James Mountain's daughter wrote an op-ed defending her dad and asking for his support for the position. And of course, the governor is keeping him on. He is now in the position, just not confirmed, and we'll see what happens. I'm curious, if you want to pull back the lens a little bit in this whole thing, I'm curious your take on it. We've got the letter from the daughter, but the initial shock of the governor's announcement of this appointment was just heard around the state. I've never really seen anything like it. I'm curious what you made of that.
I was puzzled as heck about it. I don't see the utility of it for the governor. I think it makes her look bad. It makes it look like a patronage deal, especially when the opposition surfaced. As far as the daughter, well, fine. We all love our dads. We try to show our dad and mom's best sides to the world. I didn't blame the daughter for writing the letter. I do have an issue with the governor for for doing it in the first place. There was no reason to do this controversial appointment or near appointment in the first place. Why do that? As it was said on our last discussion of this, the optics are terrible. What was the reason? We don't know. The indigenous community is up in arms about it, appropriately so. He can serve now without being confirmed. The next opportunity is January 2024.
Wow.
So that is more than half the year. He's going to serve under what I might call a public indictment for what he has done but not been convicted of. And that's the other thing, Gene. People are trying to equate lack of sufficient evidence with exoneration. It is not the same thing. There is still a cloud over this guy. The indigenous women's community particularly has asked that a indigenous woman be appointed to this position, and I think they're onto something there.
Reminding the folks he's in the position paying $169,000 a year, as a matter of fact, and he's unconfirmed. It's actually an interesting scenario. The process, I got to go back to this process of not having that Senate vote. Should the governor perhaps have anticipated that the legislature was not going to touch it as soon as it came out? And what would have been her better move, in your view, as opposed to letting him just kind of drift through the process, so to speak?
Well, her better move would have been not to do it in the first place. That shows either a lack of diligence or a loyalty issue that we are unaware of, Gene, and I think the governor needs to answer for that. She's been pretty much radio silence since this. She's just letting it ride. Did she know that he would not be confirmed? Did she know that he could serve anyway? The big salary is an issue to me. Is there a personal indebtedness here of some kind? Who knows? Or is it merely not paying close enough attention? And then once you make a move like that, feeling the need to defend it, even if it's with silence, which is what's happening right now.
Thanks again to Martha Burke for that interview. We got into a few more topics, including some of those failed firearm bills. You can watch that conversation on the New Mexico in Focus YouTube page. Now let's return one last time to our line opinion panel. Before this year's session began, one thing caught the attention of lawmakers across New Mexico: the state's record-setting surplus of $3.6 billion in, quote, new money. Now flash forward to March, in their last week of the session, and lawmakers passed a $9.57 billion bill to the governor's office. This record-setting spending bill marked a $1 billion increase from the previous year's budget and increased recurring expenses about 30% on top of that. A fact that Senator George Munoz has been quoted by the Santa Fe New Mexican as being, quote, an unsustainable number. And Inez, what happened in creating this year's budget? Is the senator onto something here? That's a lot of money in 1 year, a bill.
Well, he's onto something in the sense that if you keep increasing by 14% a year, 12% a year, we're not going to have that much money because oil and gas eventually will run down. What hopefully they did strategically enough was they dedicated money. The way they described it was it's now money for the future. So there's $100 million that is going to start the Enchantment Legacy Fund, which is going to do conservation projects. That's not a recurring appropriation necessarily. And they're trying to use this surplus in strategic ways that will keep us going for the long run. And especially important, I think, is growing, the film industry, growing the medical industry. The malpractice fix was in part to make sure doctors stayed in New Mexico, which is a healthcare issue, but it's also an economic issue. So if you can keep all of our different industries thriving, our small businesses, et cetera, then we're going to have tax revenue. So when oil and gas goes away, there won't be as much to replace it, but there'll be a decent, chunk of money.
Sure, absolutely. Sean, according to Source New Mexico, your publication, the following received hundreds of millions more in funding compared to the last fiscal year: Medicaid, the state's natural resource agencies, public education, higher education, early childhood ed. $4 million more has been set aside for tourism, as well as nearly $2 million more in economic development. It's easy to pull these things out individually and sort of criticize them, But in the overall, we've been calling for increases in all these places for years. It's amazing what happens when you do meet that demand. You're suddenly the bad guy. But again, it's a lot of money. Are we to be surprised there are conservatives out there who are very, very worried that this is unsustainable for this kind of increase?
You know, voters asked for this. They wanted to spend money. You know, the messaging has been consistent even before the session that New Mexico has money and business is booming. And so, like, let's spend that money across the board. As you saw, state agencies across the board saw an increase in their budgets overall. One thing that I'm very curious to consider as we look at this going forward, I look at education, and everything in education goes back to Yazzie Martinez and the education reform. And we've seen over the past several years since that mandate happened in 2018, over $1 billion of state investment into public education. Even before and there was more money that came through this year, but there's always been a concern about, is that money being spent appropriately? There's actually school districts that have unspent money, even though they're getting more money, because there's not quite the expertise in New Mexico to be able to spend it properly. You don't have enough teachers to spend it on. So when I look at it just like from that microism of like how public education has been spending their increase in funding, which is of course, you know, the majority of the budget bill, I'm curious to know, our state agency is going to be able to keep up with all this new money.
Interesting point there. Dan, after hours of debate on the budget that you watched, the Senate Finance Committee pulled the spending plan back to make amendments after already approving it. And that caused about 48 hours, 36 hours of angst about process. Is there any follow-up to that? A lot of folks were pretty embittered how that went down. What do you think?
Yeah, the sausage making can be kind of unpleasant to watch sometimes. But in this case, I think that, you know, the Senate Finance Committee was trying to come up with an agreement that would avoid a veto by the governor, that would not prompt the House to reject the changes that the Senate had made. So there were all kinds of compromises that that look a little strange and that maybe didn't fit, you know, what the Senate Finance Committee itself wanted to do. So yeah, I think there is some bad blood on that front, and there could be changes. You know, the Senate has been trying to make the process a little more open. On the House side, we saw a leadership change with Nathan Small, who had public hearings, accepted public testimony, kind of trying to open up the budget process a little bit. So some of those things may stick around, but yeah, there are a lot of compromises and trade-offs that get made, and not everyone's going to be happy about it.
Who was it that mentioned, out of frustration, the next time you're going to have to file a bill? And instead of looking for an amendment behind closed doors, why don't we just doing that anyway? I mean, I don't know why we're allowing amendments in the first place. Why can't we just have people file bills? Inez, interestingly, the state's omnibus tax bill went down to the wire again this session, passing the House and Senate a little more than 2 hours remaining. But the governor earlier in the week said the proposed tax package, quote, you saw this, of course, cuts too deep too quickly, and asked for lawmakers to trim the bill. We don't usually hear the governor weigh in on things like this in process. What did you make of that? And was she effective?
Yeah, I think she was, because they went back and adjusted it. And I think what she's saying is that you can't spend it all at once, whether by giving rebates or sending the money out or by cutting what's coming in. I mean, part of the problem with the idea that they wanted to raise, let's say, the tax brackets for higher wage earners, and people were saying, why are you raising taxes? We have so much money. What you're doing is setting up a structure so that when you don't have as much money, you have adequate revenues coming in, because the business of the state has to be done, whether oil and gas is booming, whether it's not booming. And what we don't want to happen is to have horrible cuts like we had to when Susana Martinez was governor, you know, through no fault of her own, because the oil and gas crashed.
That's right.
So we're trying to set a sustainable economy for New Mexico.
Right. Sean, I know the big one was the approved alcohol tax increase is a far cry from what was originally proposed. Interesting, the alcohol lobby, they came out, as you would expect them, is what they do. It's their, you know, their right to do it. But who won here? Because as you know, we have a major problem when it comes to alcohol here and its effects on all of us statewide.
Wow. That's an interesting question as to who won with that. I mean, I guess it's going to be determined as to what we see. You know, this increase in alcohol tax, I believe, is a 50 cent tax. Excuse me, Dan, I have to ask you. But what was the actual?
It's pretty modest.
Modest, okay.
I don't
It's
remember
like
the
a nickel
percentage,
or
but
less.
it's
The initial
very
proposal
small.
was at 50 cents, and that got
Penny,
dropped down.
penny per drink.
Yeah.
15, my bad,
Right.
excuse me, I apologize for, yeah, but no, I think at this point, we're gonna see like that money is supposed to go towards substance abuse treatment programs and kind of, you know, harm prevention programs to support people who are dealing with substance use disorders. And so, you would assume that those individuals will benefit. But I'm really not quite sure where it's going to go from there, because it seems like ultimately the consumer's going to have to pay more. People might be drinking less, but that's kind of going to be yet to be seen. One thing that I did notice out of that tax bill too is that within it that kind of got lost. We spent so much time talking about alcohol, but there was also a cigar tax that I saw that had an increase in there, which means for a lot of our people who imbibing cannabis, the price of the blunt's going to go up.
That's right. That's a good point there. But there were some carve-outs as well. I think so. I think the local beer people got a carve-out. They're not going to be affected by this. Did I have that right, Inez? Yeah, I think that's right as well. The tax rebate, Inez, the 500 singles, 1,000 for couples, less than what the governor proposed. I talked about this with Martha Burke during my one-on-one earlier this week. $500 is still a lot of money in New Mexico. Should we feel good about that? Is that a victory for the governor?
I think it's a victory because she wanted to give some money back. Personally, if you're worried about money for the future and you keep giving it back, will you have enough money when you need it? I always worry about that.
Right.
But I know people are struggling, and that's a couple of weeks of groceries at least. It's a car payment, it's your rent, or half of your rent if you live in Santa Fe, or a third of your rent.
Right.
So, people need cash.
Yeah. Dan, your sense of that one? It was a debate, but it didn't move that far. It wasn't like we went from 3,500 down to 500. I mean, 750 to 500 may seem like a little bit, but $250 is a lot of money around here. It's a lot of dough. But we got something coming. Again, victory for the governor. She wanted this to happen last year as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the initial House legislation, I think, had even smaller rebates. So, so she did get them to move the number up a bit. So I think that's something that she's satisfied with. As Inez mentioned, kind of the tension here is like, how much money do you want to give people now versus making sort of recurring changes to the tax system?
That's right.
And it's safer in some ways to just give people a rebate check now, but we don't know if that rebate check will be there in the future. This may be the last time you get one. It's hard to say.
That's an important point. During the pandemic, there was an idea that maybe these things would just sort of keep rolling for a while, but it had to end at some point. Thanks again to our Line panel as always this week. Be sure to let us know what you think about any of the topics the Line covered on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram pages, and catch any episode you may have missed on the PBS app. It's really cool. Or your Roku or Smart TV. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the viewers like you.